Welcome to Wow, a Women of Worth. Property, it's such a highly prized asset here in Singapore. I often think knowledge is power, so before you step into the property market, is there something you can do for yourself before you meet that property agent? I believe so. I think it's great to reach for a very concise and engaging book, and a new publication that's out there that ticks all the boxes for me is Woon Lye's brand new book, Powering Your Property Tree. Woon Lye is a professional in the banking industry, or was. She stepped out of the corporate world. She's now got a brand new book out there on bookshelves, and she's here to share with us some information that she's used to train and lead many key managers and bankers, industry champions when it comes to the property sector here in Singapore. Woon Lye, my guest in Wow. How are you, Woon Lye? Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Michelle, for having me, and Happy New Year to all.
Oh, Happy New Year to you too. We're going to dive into your book, find out a little bit more about the TDSR, the background and understanding the property in Singapore, property prices, and also a look at the future of the property market here in Singapore in just a while. But first, you've come at a great time, Woon Lye, because here in Singapore, a key interest rate that housing loans in Singapore are pegged to have risen sharply for a second day, and I'm sure there are many homeowners out there worried about higher mortgage payments. What is your reading of the SIBOR fluctuation, or this particular fluctuation in the interest rate?
Well, Michelle, my view is that SIBOR has probably factored in this sentiment too early on the preempt of US moving up. Probably a small hiccup here, I think, because other markets are still weak. The QE is still happening in Europe and Japan, and liquidity is still likely to find its way to Southeast Asia. So I think we are somewhat psychologically prepared for further upsides.
Well, thank you for your personal insight into that particular aspect of the property market. Again, all information that you hear on this particular show is the personal thoughts of Woon Lye, my guest this evening, author of Powering Your Property Tree. Now, when you joined the property industry 35 years ago, it was a particularly challenging time. It was the start of the Asian financial crisis. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, okay. I actually started as doing banking systems, restructuring for the banks, after which I moved on to do my bit in a wedding business, a small franchise. And then I came back to banking again, and that's where I started at the local bank on the mortgage scene. Now,
you've been head of mortgage sales for a local bank here in Singapore. You have 35 years of experience under your belt. But when you first started, it was the Asian financial crisis. It was a difficult time.
Yeah, it was a very difficult time then because nobody do loans there, and we were all busy with doing non-performing loans, collecting debts and stuff like that. So at that time, I thought, the market will probably has to pick up one day. So I prepared my foundation quite right in that sense that I get myself geared up with working with agencies, real estate agencies, and then very, very, I think, fortunately, I befriended an agent, director, and he actually, moved me to some show flats, and that's where I think I was one of the pioneers for show flat duties.
What is a show flat duty?
Well, that is when a new project is up. Okay, we will be there as a finance person to support any financial needs of the buyers, and that is when I think it was the first project was Aquarius by the Park, if I can remember.
But a reservoir.
Yes, and then followed by Clear Waters, and that was where, the ride-on for property market then. Yes. So
what is, can you look back at the Asian financial crisis then and the situation with mortgages then and, where we are now and sort of draw parallels, or do you see stark differences in terms of the fluctuations? I think when people hear key interest rate, housing loans are pegged to this rate, it's been rising for a second day. There are worries that there will be a sustained rise.
Well, I think we have gone into very bad times those days where high interest rates can mount to about 4 to 5%. So that was really, those days, loans are very, very few. people dare not venture into it unless you have some earning power. So I think, as we go along, I think we have many ups and downs, all right, through the many crises that we had. It has actually gone down to below 1%. So right now, I think we are having 0.4 plus, and then, your plus spread, that would give you probably a 1.2% each.
So from your reading, not quite the time to get into panic mode just yet.
Well, I think is as I say earlier, it is a small hiccup here. People are reacting too much, probably, but we do envisage a sort of an upside going forward. I think, but it won't be, in my opinion, it wouldn't be happening within this year.
Now, in your experience, has the cooling measures made it harder for average man on the street to make money in the property market, or do you think there's still deals to be made?
Well, I think from observations, it's sort of like dampen many buyers, especially foreigners, because they need to have huge placements. If they don't have reported income, so that is the thing, and that's a concern of many people right now. Yes.
Share with us a little bit about this idea of placements if you don't have reported property. And your book gives us a wonderful breakdown of these placements that are required should you be looking at a property that's valued at about $1 million, right? And could you share a little bit about what people need to be aware of?
Yes, if you, I think in my book, I actually cited this example for $1 million loan. The monthly installment works out to be about 7,000 plus. So if you're unable to show your proof of income, then there is this asset under management to be is required by the financial institution. So that can come up to about probably 1.9 million. So under the rule instituted last June, the authorities actually only take 30% of the AUM amount, and that has to be divided by 48 months to arrive at an absolute income of, let's say, 11,000 to work out to be for the 1.9 million. So that is exactly probably able to service, to afford the monthly installment of 7,000 plus, which is actually 60% of the absolute income, which is a requirement for the TDSR, which is the total debt servicing ratio requirement.
In your experience in the market, are there still plenty of myths out there to be slain? Is that part of the reason why you wanted to write this book?
Yes, because actually many have asked, they have come with different backgrounds, with confused perspective of the market. So actually the book aims to simplify a step-by-step approach to owning a property, because at the end of the day, I think everybody who needs to think of either having a roof over their head, they have to go through this thinking process. It's like almost like you want to put forward some form of a roadmap, to guide you, and it can be any age group, especially now when there are so much uncertainties and variabilities, and this book actually provide a step-by-step approach to your owning a property.
That's wonderful. Whether you're a seasoned investor or you're new to the property market, and this book being released now will give you the framework that you need to understand all the mortgage regulations as well, I'm sure. Freehold versus leasehold, does it matter? This is a very common question, and I think in Singapore there's a preference for freehold, isn't there?
Yes, I have actually had a chapter on that in the book. Freehold, yes, they command better pricing and probably better returns in the long run. So on leaseholds, the moment it reaches, in my opinion, it reaches 10 years, it's sort of like slowing down and then sort of plateau until something like an en bloc news come up, for the project, and that's where, the upside for a leasehold project is is there.
Okay, so we know what you're recommending. The question is, as Singapore moves forward and population predicted to soar to about 6.9 million by 2030, based on some government figures, and land scarcity, fast-growing population, does that then mean that you should be looking at buying the most amount of space that your dollar can afford you?
Well, you can say that, Michelle, because at the end of the day, I think, it's land scarce Singapore. If Singapore is a financial hub, it's a medical hub, it's an education hub, and so on. So Singapore is getting very popular to the world. So I think, there will be many people, investors wanting to invest in Singapore, especially, Singapore is a known property country. So we are one of the top 10 markets in real estate in the world. So likely, the funds will flow to this part of the world. And if you're talking about, moving forward and the forward trend and looking ahead, I think there are good prospects in property investments.
Well, that's good to hear. Very good to hear. Woon Lye has more than 35 years of experience in the banking industry. She spent 16 of those years as head of mortgage sales for one of the largest local banks here in Singapore. What are some of the key areas of information you think that people need to know about when thinking about qualifying for a mortgage? So what sort of mortgage regulations do you think people should be acquainted with?
Well, when they come anybody comes for a mortgage, I think the main concern is their earning ability, and their affordability as well. So I think in most instances, we have to look into the commitments, the financial commitments that each individual has, and then you have to calculate that whether you meet the TDSR right now. There's a regulatory requirement. So unless you meet, it is you have to think of other alternative income source, to back up the loan that you require. So it's a bit tough now.
We love our acronyms here in Singapore, AYEECP, TDSR. For someone who's really new to the acronym, tell us what that means and what people need to understand about that and how that impacts their ability to qualify for a mortgage.
Okay, basically, the TDSR actually checks on the prudence of and stability of both the lenders and the borrowers. So, I think I wrote a chapter on that.
You did indeed. That's on page 145.
Yes. So basically, you just have to use your income, your gross income, okay, and whatever debt obligations that you have, you total that up, and then you just divide by your total income. That is, you mustn't exceed the 60%.
That's it. That's a key figure, isn't it? Yes. We're talking about the TDSR. That's a total debt servicing ratio. That's what that acronym stands for. And the framework was put into effect 29th June 2013. And you just heard Woon Lye talking a little bit about how financial institutions will not be able to approve a loan if the buyer's total debt obligation exceeds 60% of the gross monthly income. And this is total debt, right?
Yes. Total debt.
Yeah. Yes. Includes credit cards and loans, and overseas properties.
Overseas properties as well, yes.
Okay. And, in terms of the measures and what it's done on the market and your reading, are there still attractively priced projects still selling very well?
Well, I think right now it is the buyer's market, right? So you can get some hot buys, and then if you think that you want certain projects, I think the developers will probably, oblige that. So if you are great enough, you'll probably get a price that is, already pricing any downside, going forward for the next 2 years.
So it's buyer's market. And,
yes, it is certainly that.
What are your words of advice for sellers?
Well, sellers.
Yeah. Does this book speak to sellers as well?
Yes, it does. Well, sellers, I think what you you can, well, there'll still be people who can afford, all right? Probably, probably not so active now in the market, but rather you can actually get all these some good takers, if you're lucky enough. Well, yeah. I think the sellers right now, they have to be bothered about the SSD if they have to pay that.
Which
SSD.
Stands for again?
It stands for seller stamp duty. So if you think that you incorporate that, and if that's your intent to sell at that time, at this time, well, why not? Because you buy low, you sell low, you buy low.
What do buyers want? What is it in buyers' interest to be looking at when it comes to property here in Singapore? My guest is Yip Woon Lye. Powering Your Property Tree is her brand new publication that's just been released. She's a seasoned mortgage professional. More details after this.
Add to your wow factor with Michelle Martin in the Wow Club on 938 Live.
My guest in Wow, A Women of Worth, is Yip Woon Lye, author of Powering Your Property Tree. A wonderful book. I think it's a great primer and very comprehensive and engaging, whether you're looking at your first home or you're looking to upgrade or you're a high net worth individual or you're somebody trying to figure out what TDSR means. And here in Singapore, understanding that framework for total debt servicing is so important to being able to decide where you want to step in when it comes to the mortgage market. She's a woman who's been at the head of the mortgage market for many, many years. Yip Woon Lye has more than 35 years of experience in banking, 16 of those spent as head of mortgage sales in a local bank. So this book was part of what you could do when you retired, is that it?
Well, when I decide to leave the corporate world.
Okay, so you're
I just
not retiring yet because still active.
I want to be active, at least in the mind.
You're very active. You wrote this while you were still in the corporate world?
Yes, I took 6 months to write it, after my office days.
Amazing.
Usually in the nights.
Share with me why you wanted to put a book like this out in this market where, many people feel maybe because of the cooling measures, they like to take a little break from the property market.
Well, I think this is the time where you probably want to sit back and really, go through your sums again and see how you're going to venture into your next property. So this book can be timely because it gives you a simpler process, and it leads you to. It helps you in your thinking process. And at the end of the day, inevitably, all have to go through this thinking process to buy a book.
Well, there's some key areas that you thought that people really need to get into in order to understand the property market.
Well, I think the key areas should be, understanding the real estate market in Singapore. What are the factors that actually drive real estate? So that has to be sort of like analyzed for you to come to a decision.
What does your book bring to the table about this whole process of entering the market or making that decision? Is it people always think location? What else does your book bring towards an understanding of the factors that you need to understand when it comes to entering the market?
I think, you see, every person has their own unique needs and wants. I think it is more your intent and your needs and your wants, whether you want to buy something that is, you want to pay a premium for it, to match up with your preferences, or you just go with yields, if that's your intent, to have returns. So whether the returns can be immediate, and that's through your rental income, or for capital gains, for the future. Yeah. So basically, many would think of these two options to clear. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question I think are on a lot of buyers' minds right now. What is in a buyer's interest to look at right now in Singapore?
Well, as I say earlier, you sell low, you buy low, and you may, if you have the opportunity to get something of your like, then, and if it matches your affordability, then perhaps, if you can, it's a buyer's market now, you probably will be able to bargain for something that,
Is the mid-market segment
yes.
interesting? There were changes, and I think maybe a couple of months back, there was a lot of talk about ECs, executive condos, being interesting to look at, especially if they've reached the 20-year mark or so. Are there certain segments that excite you about the property market?
Well,
if your intention is to make a killing, so to speak.
I think it's all about affordability and sustainability. If you can afford, it is within. You see, I always advise my clients not to overcommit. I think that is some considerations everybody has to go through. You should not be. You should guard your finances and not, analyze and dissect. Your financial considerations before stepping into this long-term commitment. I regard having a house, is a long-term commitment. Yeah.
You do talk about, for example, landed properties versus non-landed properties here in Singapore. I think part of the Singapore dream is let's get a terrace house that looks a little bit shabby, and then we will add a couple of levels to it and sell it for a killing.
Yes, I think both landed and non-landed, they have their attributes. So you have to see, what is your intent and what is your preference and your purpose of buying the property. So if it is a landed, would you want something that is you care for built-in areas, or would you want land areas? So, I said this in the book that, would you rather buy a semi-D of the same built-in area as a terrace, and then having the same built-in and enjoy the same luxury of space within the house? So, or would you prefer, greenery in your surroundings and having a bigger land piece? So it's more of needs and wants and your preferences in property buying.
You have a whole segment here called Buying Old Landed Terraces versus Newly Built Terraces, right? And you share with people a little bit about the alteration works and what that could bring in as well in terms of costs. So I think, your book is it gives great advice to individuals in terms of the hidden costs that they may not be thinking about when entering the market. So old landed terraces, do they still outperform newly built ones, or? Well,
it
in
depends.
The long term.
Yeah, in the long term, I think, if you are, it sort of differ if you have, your intent is to live in it. All right. So if you intend to actually lease out and get an income out of it, then, perhaps you have to go where the masses think, So if you want to live in it, of course, it is your own preferences and you go to your own designs and stuff like that. So I would think that it's a matter of individual preferences, yeah.
Okay, so what should people think about when they're thinking of the trade-off between condominium and landed properties, and they're thinking, which should I pick? What should they be aware of?
Well, I think it's the title ownership that everyone must know, that if it is a landed, you have full ownership of the title, whereas, if you're on a condo, it is more a strata title. There's a difference there. And, of course, you own the land. And that is somewhat key, and many may think, I think probably the Asian mindset, that it may be a wealth symbol in that sense.
Yeah. Are foreign buyers still keen on the local market here in Singapore? That plays into this idea of the sustainability of the market, right?
Well, for foreigners. Okay, Singapore is a global city, so and we are having the government is having this population growth policies of growing it to 6.9 million by 2030. So that will capture a bigger slice from the foreigners. So if they come in, okay, right now, they'll probably be, get themselves prepared for paying out of their own pocket, because they may not have recognizable income that the financial institutions may want.
Okay, so you do believe, and I think you've touched on it a little bit in the first half of the program, you do believe in the sustainability and the viability of the market here in Singapore in the long term.
Yeah.
Do you think when it comes to prudence, what else do home buyers need to consider besides their flow of income?
I think you need to consider the upside of the property. Does it give you immediate gains, or are you looking at something that is 20 years' time or 10 years' time that will give you some good yields? So it's a matter of whether if you want something very short term that is immediate yield, that is for rental, and you want to hold it for probably for the next 2 years or so, then your focus will probably be different when you select a property.
Wow, so many changing variables.
Yes.
Goodness me. How did you know when it was time to stop writing this book? Where did you decide that you were going to end it? How did you know it reached the last page?
Yeah. Well, probably my second book, I just address things that...
You're already thinking for a second book?
Yes. Yeah. I probably will continue writing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
For the interest to reach out to a wider audience, and to benefit, hopefully, many as possible.
Yeah, very engaging book,
Yes.
very comprehensive. I'm
you.
chatting with Woon Lye, author of Powering Your Property Tree. More from her after this.
To your Wow Factor with Michelle Martin in the Wow Club on 938 Live.
Yip Woon Lye is my guest in the WOW Club. WOW stands for Women of Worth. She certainly can advise you when it comes to a property and in terms of, deciding on the value of the property that you want to get your hands on perhaps, or the sort of property myths you should be acquainted with that should be slain. I think she does a great job doing just that in her book, Powering Your Property Tree. Any last words of advice for individuals out there thinking about entering the market? Why should they pick up your book?
Well, I want to qualify at this juncture, Michelle, that the contents of the book are based on my personal evaluation, experiences, and ideas and opinions, and has no intention to mirror any instances, examples, or coincidences of similar nature.
So disclaimer aside, why should they pick up your book?
Yes, for it is a simple step-by-step approach to your buying a property, whether it's a first property that you own or as an investment.
Wonderful talking to you. Can't wait for your next book to be out there. My guest this evening, Yip Woon Lye, author of Powering Your Property Tree. I'm Michelle Martin. Thanks for being part of WOW.
Thank you, Michelle.
Add to your Wow Factor with Michelle Martin in the Wow Club on 938 Live.